girl, trying to convince herself she wasn't a vampire, ended up biting the boy on his neck. The result? The boy was nailed into a wooden coffin. More people believed she was a vampire, but she still refused to believe it. So she transferred to the Sailor Academy with excellent grades. This was the best noble academy in Rivelfeed, strictly excluding vampires. Finally, she shook off the vampire accusations. Yet, she couldn't forget the boy's trusting gaze back then. After some self-reflection, Suho started cleaning and organizing her room. As she was lifting the entire bed, she saw a boy suddenly appear. Suho hurriedly explained she wasn't a vampire, but knowing no one would believe her, the confidence she had painstakingly built crumbled. Her tears began to fall uncontrollably. However, the boy said, "I believe you. After all, our school's entrance checks are so strict." Hearing this, Suho was grateful for his understanding. Then her tone turned serious. "I really don't want to be mistaken as a vampire, because I despise vampires more than anyone in the world." Hearing this, the boy broke out in cold sweat. Suddenly, Suho's expression brightened. Because here, she didn't need to worry about being misunderstood. The boy also realized Suho had suffered a lot before. Then Suho said, "It's all because of vampires." The boy broke out in cold sweat again. Suho recalled that before she was born, her parents said vampires were just fiction. She couldn't figure out why they suddenly appeared. Hearing this, the boy's expression turned serious. Not long after, Suho found the boy's book. They chatted for a while using the book as a topic. Since she usually didn't have friends to talk to, Suho said a lot, until Suho thought she might be annoying him. But he assured her that wasn't the case. So Suho gave the book to the boy. The boy took the book, greeted her, and left. Only then did Suho realize she hadn't asked his name. Suddenly, the door opened again. The boy stood outside and asked Suho for her name. The sudden happiness nearly overwhelmed Suho. She repeated her name several times. Then they both fell silent. After a while, the boy finally asked, "Don't you want to know my name?" Only then did Suho hurriedly ask for his name. Her reaction made the boy feel awkward. He introduced himself as Heli. After a few polite exchanges, he left. Walking down the hallway, Heli was suddenly approached by a red-haired boy calling him Heli bro. The boy introduced himself as Gino. Following behind were Sean with yellow hair, Soren with blue hair, and Ian with gray hair. When they heard that Heli wanted to befriend a human, Soren was the first to object. The group then started a mental discussion. Heli, however, didn't accept Soren's opinion. He felt Suho was different, as if she shared a similarity with him. Gino argued that if she were one of their kind, she wouldn't have been able to enroll here. Heli also knew Suho wasn't one of them, but there was an inexplicable attraction about her. Sean teased, "Heli bro, could it be that you like her?" But Soren immediately denied it. "We can't have those kinds of feelings. And we shouldn't, even if we want to get along. Humans will always." Ian added that getting too close would put Suho in danger. After listening to their opinions, Heli sighed. After a while, Soren emphasized aloud, "In short, everyone, stay away from the new transfer student." Unbeknownst to them, Suho had been standing behind them. She lowered her head in shame, not expecting to be rejected so quickly. She'd always been like this. Her abilities made others think she was a vampire. No one wanted to play with her. She thought there'd be no such issues here without vampires. But she still couldn't escape it. She assumed their gazes were like those of people from her past. But that wasn't the case. Their eyes showed surprise and a bit of awkwardness. Suho felt uneasy under their stares. Sean was the first to greet her, and introduced himself. His enthusiasm left Suho flustered. Thankfully, Gino pushed him aside just in time. While mocking Sean, Gino introduced himself as well. Sean stood there glaring. "Gino bro, you don't have to put me down like that." At that moment, Ian wiped his hands, and courteously extended them towards Suho. "Hi, I'm Ian." Suho happily greeted him in return. Suddenly, Ian said, "Don't take what Soren said to heart. We didn't agree with him." Soren gritted his teeth in frustration. "That's not what you said earlier during the discussion." Suho noticed this and thought, "So he really does dislike me. And he even said all those things just now." Soren turned his head away arrogantly. Although Suho felt a bit disappointed, it was still much better than before. She couldn't figure out how Heli introduced her, to make them treat her so warmly. Soren stood there awkwardly, wanting to invite them to leave together. But they all ignored him. Instead, it was Heli who first asked Suho where she wanted to go. When he learned she wanted to familiarize herself with the campus, the others enthusiastically volunteered to join. Soren, of course, couldn't let his pride go. Someone had to invite him to join too. So the group first took Suho to visit the library. Suho expressed interest in the type of books Heli was holding, but Heli said those books required special approval to read. Finally, he told her he'd summarize them for her after reading. As they toured the school, Sean introduced the group's dynamics. He first mentioned that both he and Suho were in 10th grade. Ian and Gino were in 11th grade. Soren didn't say his grade. Ellie was in 12th grade. Hearing this, Suho found it strange. You're not in the same grade but have such a close bond, that's amazing. Her remark made the group feel awkward. After a moment, Helly explained that they grew up together. All their parents were gone. They came from the same orphanage. Suho finally understood. She apologized for her thoughtless comment. The group seemed relieved. Before long, they arrived at the sports field. Gino mentioned there were 2 great companions on the field. They were practicing for an upcoming league match. Suho wanted to ask more about the league. Suddenly, Ian's eyes narrowed. Something seemed to have shattered under his gaze. The rest quickly shielded Suho protectively. Upon closer inspection, they saw it was a soccer ball kicked from the field. A white-haired and a purple-haired boy ran over. They were Zaka and Noah, 2 of the 7 boys. Seeing Ian, the 2 apologized, and then quickly ran off. Ian turned back to check on Suho. Helly had caught Suho in his arms. Suho immediately jumped back like a spring. Her face red, she thanked them profusely. Before Helly could finish speaking, she quickly ran away. The others assumed she was just scared by the ball. Outside her dormitory, Suho's heart was still pounding. After all, this was the first time a boy had protected her. Suddenly, a voice behind her startled her. It was the blue-haired Soren. He asked Suho, "Do you know my name?" Since Chris's DATH, Suho had no friends, until she came to the Sailor Academy, where the 7 handsome boys were utterly captivated by her. What Suho didn't know was that Helly and the others were vampires. Even they were puzzled by their attraction to her. They felt an inexplicable pull toward her. Although Suho wasn't one of their kind, they had an intense desire to fulfill her every wish. Sean thought this was love, but they couldn't feel such emotions. Moreover, they sensed a powerful energy emanating from Suho. Even the aloof Soren sought her out. He immediately asked if she knew his name. Suho felt uneasy under his gaze. She nervously stammered his name. Hearing her answer, Soren's expression grew complicated. He let out a cold, arrogant hum and turned to leave. Suddenly, Suho called out to him, "Thank you for earlier." Soren was baffled by her words. Suho explained that when the ball flew toward her, he had pulled her out of the way. Hearing this, Soren instantly became flustered. "I wasn't helping you. There was dust on your clothes, and I just brushed it off." Suho looked at him knowingly but said nothing. She was about to suggest getting along better in the future, but was interrupted by Soren. "Don't even think about becoming friends with us. We don't make friends with others. Especially not you." Suho was mortified on the spot. What she didn't know was that Soren had left something unsaid. Suho gave him a strange feeling. A mysterious attraction. To control his impulses, he quickly uttered harsh words and left. Suho, hearing this, teared up. This completely stunned Soren. Suho, feeling wronged, said, "Fine. From now on, I won't even greet any of you." Hearing this, Soren panicked. He suddenly said she should greet them. And greet them often. "The reason I told you not to get too close to us isn't because I dislike you. It's just because." Soren hesitated. Then he turned his head and said he wouldn't explain. "Anyway, they won't listen to me either. So don't take what I said too seriously. I'm leaving, good night." Hearing the words good night, Suho smiled again. She also bid farewell to Soren. Time quickly passed, and evening arrived. It was Suho's first day of classes at the Sailor Academy. Unexpectedly, she ran into Helly right as she stepped out. "Suho, let's walk together." Hearing this, Suho looked surprised. Helly continued as they walked. "I want to go to class with you. Didn't we agree to be friends?" Suho thought he was just trying to save her from feeling awkward. She hadn't expected Helly to be so popular. But thinking about it, it made sense. After all, he was handsome and kind. Helly also noticed Suho's odd expression. He leaned closer to her ear and whispered, "Do you feel uncomfortable walking with me?" Hearing this, Suho hurriedly explained that wasn't the case. "I was worried you'd feel uncomfortable because of me. After all, you've been friends since childhood. You must hate it when someone suddenly intrudes." Helly immediately realized Soren must have spoken to her. He explained that Soren meant no harm. Then he asked if Suho had any questions. Suddenly, Helly went silent. Then a voice sounded in Suho's mind. "It's because we have a secret." Suho was so shocked she couldn't form coherent words. Helly explained, "This is telepathy. Now I've shared our secret with you. Because I trust you." Then Helly returned to speaking normally and told Suho to focus on class. It took a long time for Suho to calm down. In class 10A, Sean was thrilled to see Suho in the same class. He immediately pointed to a seat next to him for Suho. But it was clear someone was already sitting there. Sean waved dismissively, saying it was fine. Soren can sit somewhere else. Suho felt a chill run down her spine. She quickly turned to look back. Soren was standing there, his face dark with annoyance. After finishing the day's classes, Helly and the others volunteered to help Suho organize her room. They insisted that Suho just sit and rest. But Suho adamantly refused. She immediately picked up a wooden crate on the floor. Ian tried to stop her, but it was too late. As the cloth on the crate slipped off, Suho finally saw what was inside. She froze, stunned. Ian then explained it was a 200-pound barbell. Hearing this, Suho felt even more dazed. The room fell into an eerie silence. Helly was the first to break the awkward stillness. He asked Suho to hand him the barbell. Sure enough, he lifted it with ease. Using telepathy, he reassured her. It's okay, Suho. See? I have this ability too. Do you think I'm scary and dislike me because of it? Suho quickly shook her head, denying it. Seeing the two standing motionless, Soren immediately realized Helly was using telepathy on Suho. The others also looked tense. However, Helly openly admitted it. He then asked Suho, "You'll keep this secret for us, right?" Hearing this, Suho immediately promised not to tell anyone. They treated it as an exchange of secrets. Suho then praised their telepathy as amazing. Suddenly, Sean appeared, startling her. Sean looked smug and said, "Look, I can stick to walls." Ian picked up the barbell and began juggling it. Gino extended his warm hand toward Suho and said, "If your hands are cold, let me know." Soren watched the group's antics, grinding his teeth in frustration. When he opened his eyes, he found Suho staring at him with eyes full of admiration. "What are you staring at? I don't have anything like that." Hearing this, Suho looked disappointed. Seeing her reaction, Soren's face turned red. "I do have it. But I'm not showing you." He quickly left the room to avoid further embarrassment. However, he didn't leave immediately. He stayed outside, listening to the laughter inside. Before long, the room was teed up. After bidding everyone goodbye, Suho sighed to herself. It's so nice to have such wonderful friends. And they all have special abilities. So why does everyone have these amazing powers? Could they be? Suho immediately dismissed the thought. She reminded herself that, as someone wrongly accused, she couldn't unjustly place blame on others like those who had wronged her. Besides, Helly was the second person to believe in her. She decided she should trust him too. Suho suddenly felt she wasn't so unique after all. Her new friends seemed to be just like her. Meanwhile, near the school's perimeter wall, several agile figures jumped into the school grounds. They muttered, "Where are those vampires?" A few minutes later, Suho was walking across campus with trash in hand. She hadn't expected the dumpster to be so far away. The path was also so dark. More importantly, it was 3 a.m. The setting reminded her of the headmaster's warning. There had been a murder nearby recently. Rumor had it that vampires were responsible. Suho's hair stood on end. She wished she could tell those who thought she was a vampire that she was terrified of vampires herself. Finally, she managed to throw the trash into the dumpster. As she turned to head back, she felt a chill down her spine. Suho instinctively grabbed a hand reaching for her. With a swift move, she flipped a 6-foot man over her shoulder. The ground cracked under the impact. Only then did Suho notice he was wearing a school uniform. Before she could think further, the man's two companions rushed over. The blonde one angrily revealed his sharp claws. Suho remained calm, clenching her fists. Seeing Suho, the man hesitated. But Suho's punch landed squarely on his stomach. The force made the man cough up bile. He ended up writhing on the ground in pain. The purple-haired one, however, looked thrilled. "Oh my god, you actually knocked down Brother Naza. Who are you?" Suho found their reaction ridiculous. "I should be the one asking you. Are you vampires?" The purple-haired man told Suho to take that back. "Don't misunderstand. We're not vampires," a man with glasses added. "To us, they're no different from pests." It seemed this group despised vampires. Even the man who had been knocked down admitted he hated vampires the most. Finding common ground, the group quickly cleared up the misunderstanding. The men introduced themselves. They told Suho they were students from Yuching Academy. They had come here to find someone. "I knew I smelled something disgusting." Zaka and Noah suddenly appeared beside Suho. "What are you guys doing surrounding a girl at night?" The previously calm atmosphere grew tense. Fortunately, Naza remained rational. "A student from our school was killed. It's related to a vampire murder case." Zaka scoffed. "And what does that have to do with us? You're probably the ones who killed those students." Tensions rose as the man's tone turned hostile. Zaka and Noah really ed themselves for a fight. "So, can you take responsibility for your words?" Zaka was unfazed. "Coming here on a full moon just proves you know you can't beat us otherwise." With that, both sides charged at each other. A shout of "Stop!" rang out. Suho stepped between them. "Everyone, stop. Don't fight." Now, even if they wanted to fight, they couldn't. Using her strength, Suho forcefully restrained the two men. Noah approached Suho to explain that he wanted to help her. Suho said it was just a small misunderstanding. At that moment, Zaka and Noah realized they had been overpowered. Before they could process it, Helly appeared. "It's so late, what are you all doing here?" The students from Yuching Academy grew tense. Stay away from Suho. Heli walked over to Suho, his tone softening. Suho, are you hurt? He gently guided Suho to leave with him. However, the other group wasn't ready to let them go. Seeing this, Heli turned back, his face cold with anger. I have nothing to say to you. Get out of our school. You're the ones who killed our students, aren't you? Heli replied impatiently, we didn't. But the other group refused to believe him. They claimed they had evidence. Seeing their persistence, Heli spoke up. And if it were us, what would you do? What could you even do? An overwhelming aura radiated from Heli. Even Suho, standing beside him, was stunned. Taha became convinced it was Heli in his group. Heli, at that moment, was exuding murderous intent. Suho quickly stopped him from acting. She also calmed Taha and his group down. Heli realized he had lost control. I'm sorry, Suho. I won't fight anymore. He then spoke calmly to the other group. I understand why you suspect us. But it wasn't us. Whether you believe me or not. At least don't start a fight here. Can't you see Suho is scared? Hearing this, Taha's group hesitated. If you really want to settle this, then let's settle this during the Night Ball League. We'll face off properly on the sports field. After hesitating for a moment, Taha said, Suho, I'll let them off the hook today for your sake. Sorry for scaring you earlier. With those parting words, the group left angrily. Suddenly, Gino seemed to sense something. Shortly after, he sent the others away and confronted Soren alone. It was well known that werewolves and vampires were mortal enemies. But Soren happened to be a hybrid of both species. He had only just discovered this himself. But it didn't take long for others to find out. That person was Gino, the werewolf from Yucheng Academy. Gino was curious about the existence of such a hybrid. But Soren wasn't planning to tell him anything. Gino didn't press further. Instead, he brought up the recent student tragedy at their school. The victim had clear bite marks on their neck. And their blood had been completely drained. Soren immediately realized Gino suspected him in his group. To his surprise, Gino accused them outright. Just because we might have certain impulses, doesn't mean werewolves don't, too. Especially on a full moon night like tonight. Gino admitted that the instinct was strong during such nights. But he insisted they would never harm humans. Soren stated that his group was the same. But he couldn't vouch for other vampires. Gino found his explanation suspicious. Soren hesitated but eventually told the truth. He explained that he and his group felt as though they had awakened from an ancient dream. They couldn't fully understand their own existence. Soren didn't even know why he had werewolf blood. Although others assumed they were the same as ordinary vampires, they didn't see themselves that way. After hearing this, Gino felt a certain fondness for Soren, perhaps because of his half-werewolf lineage. Surprisingly, Soren didn't entirely dislike Gino either. However, just as Soren extended his hand, Gino was called away by his teammates. Meanwhile, Heli had just escorted Suho back to her dormitory. This gave Suho the chance to meet Zaka and Noah. Both of them stared at Suho in a daze. It wasn't until Suho said goodnight and went inside that they asked Heli about her identity. Using telepathy, they communicated with Heli. He sensed a powerful energy wave and rushed over. We saw Suho single-handedly taking on 3 or 4 werewolves. That was the first time I felt such an overwhelmingly strong energy wave. Noah added, when we were about to start fighting, Suho's single word stopped us entirely. It made us completely unable to resist. This makes us think Suho might be a powerful elder of our kind. After hearing this, Heli clarified that Suho wasn't one of them. On the contrary, she despises vampires more than anyone else. Meanwhile, Suho was processing everything that had happened. She couldn't understand why Taha accused Heli and his group. Coupled with the headmaster's claims about vampire-related cases, she began to question Heli and his friends' identities. Soon after, Heli and his group gathered to discuss the situation. Since Suho was now staying at their usual meeting spot, the meeting was moved to Soren's room. The reasoning was that it was central and tidy. Regarding the students who had been drained of blood, many pieces of evidence pointed to vampires. However, their blood drinking was confined to specific days. Despite this, they worried Suho might misunderstand. Soren raised his voice slightly. That's why I said we shouldn't get too close to her. And now you've all revealed your powers to her. Zaka reacted angrily to this. Meanwhile, Heli and the other 3 looked utterly relaxed. Soren turned his head away arrogantly. Of course, I didn't tell her anything. Noah, who had been quiet, spoke up. But, Soren, we've never seen your power. Could it be that you don't actually have one? Hearing this, Soren became flustered. Sean didn't miss the chance to add fuel to the fire. If that's the case, let's just fight him to the ATH. Soren was both angry and speechless. Sean's eyes sparkled mischievously. Just kidding. I believe in you. After all, your powers are stronger than anyone's. Then the group's focus shifted back to Suho. To prevent Suho from learning they were vampires and growing to hate them, they decided to keep things simple and just greet her casually. However, the next evening, Sean approached Suho. Let's hang out this weekend. He ignored Soren's growls of disapproval. "We can go to the plaza. Take a walk and eat some ice cream. Just the two of us." Suddenly, Soren appeared between them. "No way, I'm coming too." Sean wasn't happy about this. Soren, on the other hand, didn't trust Sean not to say something foolish. Seeing that they couldn't resolve the argument, Soren used telepathy to inform the others. Soon, everyone was clamoring to join. As the two continued bickering, a voice echoed in Suho's mind. "Suho, are you going to the plaza this weekend? Can I join you?" Suho, blushing, agreed shyly. Helly then appeared behind her. "See you this weekend. Out of every group of 7, there's always a wildcard. Vampires are no exception." Despite their earlier agreement to distance themselves from Suho, Sean sought her out immediately after the meeting ended. If not for Soren being in the same class as Sean, Suho might not even realize where she'd been dragged off to. In the end, all 7 decided to accompany Suho to the plaza. But Sean, being Sean, had other plans. Early Saturday morning, Suho arrived at the plaza. Sean happily greeted her. Seeing he was alone, Suho was a bit puzzled. Sean explained that the others were just too busy. "They're all a bunch of flaky guys who ditched plans. So, let's just have fun together. Forget about them." Naive as ever, Suho believed him completely. Without much thought, she followed Sean. However, she felt a little disappointed. She wanted to ask Helly if something had happened, but decided against it. She didn't want to bother him. As a result, she spent the walk looking glum. She suddenly remembered that she could communicate with Helly telepathically. But she quickly realized that unless Helly reached out first, she couldn't contact him. This left her feeling a little disappointed. While she was lost in thought, Sean returned with ice cream. Sean grinned proudly, showing off his teeth. "I asked for extra toppings." Suho was both surprised and delighted. Just as Sean was reveling in the beauty of their time together, Ian's angry voice echoed in his mind. "Sean, where are you right now? Didn't we agree to meet at 7? It's only 5, and you've already run off." Hearing this, Sean remained calm. "I told you it was 5 o'clock all along. And now I'm the only one who didn't ditch Suho. You guys are so disappointing." Soren was furious. He declared he wouldn't let Sean get away with this. Sean shrugged nonchalantly. "Come at me, then. We'll be on a boat soon. Fight me on the water if you dare." Suho watched Sean's animated expressions from the side. She had no idea Sean was communicating with the others. After some thought, she spoke. "Thank you, Sean. You must be busy too. But you still came to spend time with me." Hearing this, Sean's face turned red. "Well, I guess I'm just more thoughtful." Suho then mentioned that it was her first time at the plaza. She explained that she was always afraid of crowded places. Sean noticed her unease. "Let's go on a boat ride. There aren't many people on the water. If we leave now, we can catch the sunset." He told Suho to wait while he went to buy tickets. Suho obediently stayed put. "Suho," Helly's voice echoed in her mind. "Suho, are you at the plaza right now?" Hearing this, Suho felt a surge of joy. "I thought you had something urgent to do today?" Hearing this, Helly felt a bit embarrassed. "It's not urgent, it's important." Curious, Suho asked him what was so important. "Seeing you." Those two simple words made Suho's cheeks flush. She nervously took a big bite of her ice cream. "I thought you didn't joke around much." Helly assured her he wasn't joking. Suho couldn't believe it. Suho was at a loss for words. Helly told her to wait for him. He also expressed his gratitude for the chance to meet her. Suho hesitated before shyly agreeing. Suddenly, she remembered that Sean had gone to buy boat tickets. She headed to the ticket booth to tell him to stop, or to buy one more. Excited, she didn't notice the blood-red eyes watching from the alley. The next moment, a large, withered hand reached out. Suho finally sensed something was wrong. But she was dragged into the alley. A hand covered her mouth tightly, stifling her screams. Suho noticed the blood-red eyes of her attacker. She summoned her strength, and delivered an over-the-shoulder throw. The ground cracked upon impact. The attacker lay motionless on the ground. Suho, finally catching her breath, noticed something unusual. The attacker's nails were abnormally sharp. A chill ran down her spine. Could he be? Before she could think further, the attacker rose in an unnatural manner. He turned his head sharply towards Suho. Seeing his face, Suho confirmed he was a vampire. Overwhelming fear rooted her to the spot. She could only watch as the vampire approached her step by step. The vampire suddenly opened his mouth wide. Suddenly Sheen showed up in time and slammed him against the wall. "Are you okay?"